Okay, I'm George H. Johns, and I was born in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba, Canada. And my birthplace was there on December the 1st, 1914. And I went ahead and when I was 6 months old, they didn't think I was going to die. They thought I had polio. So my father went ahead and sent me down to Rochester to Mayo Clinic, which was quite a thing there. My mother had to go and take me down there. And I was pretty well in bad shape. And while I was, they found out what it was, and it wasn't polio. It was something that I was, my diet that they were giving me reacted on me. And so they pulled me through. I was about 8 months old. And they pulled me through, and I came back, and so survived that. And while I was there, of course, before that, my father emigrated out from England, and there was nothing there for them because they were poor at that time. It was as bad as the Irish was with the potato famine. So he come out to his brother in Toronto, and he was a lumberjack. And anyway, while he was there, as I told Charles, he went ahead and he hadn't had an education anymore in about seventh grade in our way of doing. So he met a high school teacher who took a notion to him, and he said, well, if you come to my house and do chores and stuff, he said, you can go through this high school there. So that's what he did. Well, then his brother got killed in a accident with the tree, and so the tree went ahead and they cut it, and it was a deadfall where he was by a log, and the tree snapped off up above and come down and hit him and killed him. So my father didn't have no more ties much with Toronto. He went ahead and they had the Indian War broke out with the real rebellion out in Western Canada, and same time as what we had with the Indians up there in North Dakota. And he joined the militia, and he went out there, and he was saying that when they got out there to Saskatchewan, where the headquarters with the mounted police was at Regina, and he said the militia, they were sent up to which is to Edmonton, up there above Calgary, and that was where the Indians were, and the two lots were Blackfoot, which was a fellow, the chief was called Iron Kettle, and my father told me, and he said that they were the young Indians when they went in where the Indians had their camps with the teepees and all that. He said you'd see the young Indians out there with the bows and arrows, and they'd point them at you. And he said, but anyway, what I was saying was, when he was out there with them, if they got hurt, I mean, with any of the militia got hit with an arrow, which they did, they would cut it off so they didn't have, they could pull the shaft out without having the other yanking with them, and then they'd put an iron poker through, heat it up white hot, and cauterize it. And he always said that was the best way of keeping from catching anything bull. So when I was a young kid, I used to go barefooted all the time, nothing thought about it. And if I ran into a nail, which didn't happen very often, but did, why, that's what the treatment I got. And so anyway, he finally settled down and got a job in the post office in Portage la Prairie, and that's where he met my mother. And she had emigrated out, and she was one of them where they somebody paid their way, and then you had to what do they call them, where they had to stay a year with them till they paid that back, see. And so she went to Regina, and anyway, she came down, and she was taking care of this couple in Portage la Prairie, which he was a magistrate there, which is same as a judge. And so my father met her, and he decided to get married.
Can you tell us your parents' names now?
Yeah, my father's name was Henry Johns. He had, there was 8 brothers and 1 girl, and she was the tail end. She was the last one. And all the rest were the brothers, went up. He was the 7th son, and it was very unusual because he was the 7th son of the 7th son.
Wow.
And which, they have a lot of the psychic business that they go about it, but he could, I will give him his due. He did cure my aunt with goiter. I mean, I don't know how he would manipulate with his hands. He said, well, your hands done all that. So anyway, he went ahead and my mother's name was Isabella, and her mother was Spanish, and her father was Irish, and he was only 5'6", I think it was, but she was 6'1". And so at that time, that was a tall woman. I mean, they didn't have very many of them,
Yeah.
And so it was quite a couple. I mean, unusual couple. I mean, when they went around.
What was her maiden name?
Wright.
Right.
Yeah. Her original name was Wright. And no, I'm sorry, it was Griffin. Griffin.
Okay.
But she, the original one, before she married, that was her father, the grandmother's father, and but the original name was Griffin. That she was before she married my father.
Okay.
His name was Griffin, so he was a baker, and so anyway, they got married, and when after I was in the post office, he had 2 houses in Portage Prairie. He moved into one, and he decided to retire. So I can remember my father telling me about it. They had what they called the Strauss catalog, and they sent it all over Canada and all over the United States. This one, and it was on Florida, and so he was at first he was all taken up with Vineland, New Jersey, but he found out that it was pretty cold up there, so he didn't go ahead and decide about that. And anyway, he decided he'd go to Newport Richey and Tarpon Springs. And then he got this catalog, this Strauss, and they talked about DeLand. And he said, he told his brother, which was 2 years, he was 2 years younger than him, Sam. He said he had 2 children and his wife, and he was a tailor. And he said, let's retire and go down there. So they finally got around to that. They decided they'd retire. And anyway, he went ahead and he sent my mother and my aunt down here to buy a piece of property. So they got down here to land, and the people, it was where the real estate people were called Eaton. And anyway, they checked around all over, and they finally went out there into Hazen Road. My aunt bought this piece of property there, 10 acres, and my mother, she didn't know one thing from another, as far as I hate to say it. As far as buying land, she didn't understand about orange groves or anything else. So there was this place that was closer toward Glenwood, but it still was a mile from everybody. Rolling Acres is in some of my father's property, and he owned all that strip back of Rolling Acres there, about 150 acres. But there was, I can always remember, there was 3 sinkholes in there. One of them was big enough that you could drive a car around it, and never, at the back of his property. Well, anyway, he bought this, and he decided he'd go ahead, and it was an old grove that had froze down in the 1917 freeze. The people were very good, the ones that we know. Well, anyway, my aunt and uncle decided they didn't want to, they went back and they didn't come back no more. They decided they wouldn't retire right away. So my father settled down there with that, and they bought it. My mother had the choice of that place or one in Lake Helen. And they told her if he didn't like that, why, but he wanted to be close to them. So anyway, that's how we got down there. So
you came down in 1919?
1919, August of 1919.
Okay.
and there, I can remember we stayed at a place called the Melrose on Rich Avenue, little old boarding house. And we stayed there for a couple of days till he got everything going out there, and he finally got it. There was a lumber company, a lumber camp right across from where we were. They had all their, they were cutting the pines down, all the big pines there. At that time it was all pine land. And it was sent to the Bond Lumber Company out there at Glenwood, which is the other side of Glenwood, between there and DeLeon Springs. They had a big lumber company there. And anyway, he decided to, so when he got out there, why, this camp was right across. And so I was just, I mean, there wasn't any children around, because nearest one was a black family, which was about a mile away from us. And so I got, my mother was, she didn't like going ahead and hitching up the, he had a pony and that, but they had they talked my father in to go and looking after all their mules. So we had 30 head of mules to look after while they used to have the high wagons to haul the timber out. I mean, as they come out there till they loaded it on these old big trucks. And of course the trucks in those days were not what they are today. But they did haul the stuff out. They had a big trailer on the back end where they could haul it out, carry it to that lumber mill. And it was quite a thing in Glenwood, because 17 at that time went down through Glenwood and out to DeLeon Springs instead of where it is now. It ran down there, so they decided it was the Shell Road, and they decided, which has everything with Shell. I mean, they got it from these Middens, which was a big one down there, Glenwood, back of the station, and they decided to pave it. So they paved it down through and went out through Glenwood. And in the meantime, when I went, I didn't go to school till I was 7, because my father and mother didn't think that it was that I was old enough to go there and take care of myself, because I had to walk there about 2 miles. And they had free range at that time with the cows and the hogs and stuff. And so lots of times when I was going to school, why, the cows were out there and they'd be in the middle, and some of them was, well, the steers were pretty mean. I got chased up a tree 2 or 3 times when I was around 7 or 8 years old. But I got to know about all that stuff and to evade them and go around them, you know.
Yeah.
But sometimes I got late at school. My father had to explain it to the teacher about the situation. So he said, well, the only thing about it, George, you'll have to go early. So I went early and went around it. But I remember one night I come home and the darn things got me. There was an old packing house. It used to be, Bo, in those days, they had packing houses all over. That was what was in DeLand. They had 2 there on Adele. One was Exchange on one side, the Blue Goose was on the other. And then the A.C. Haynes was on Florida Avenue, right down there where they built right along by the railroad. And then there was another one up there on Orange, which was Alexander and Baird had one there. And then, of course, Glenwood had a packing house. And, of course, DeLeon Springs had what's the names? Strawn's packing house there, that big one they called them. Each one had their own idea. That one was Bob White. And they had the picture of the Bob White on their boxes and stuff. The one in Glenwood was owned by Bill Brado. And so the first year when we came down, my aunt and Ginny in Iowa went ahead and came down with her son, Arthur, and they stayed the winter with us. Well, she decided she'd go to work down there she didn't mind about hitching the horses up, the pony up. My mother didn't care about it, but I remember we did. And she and my mother went down there and worked for a while down there at the packing house there in Glenwood, down there by the old station. And anyway, I remember we went into town one day and used to hitch up behind Allen's drugstore, which is the one now where on Indiana on the corner they got, I think, a Subway or some kind of a, what's the name in it, used to be a drugstore there on the corner. The bank was across there. So they pulled in at the back, you know. Anyway, they came out this one day, and I was with them. I used to lay in the back of the buggy, and they had and old Dick, the pony, decided he didn't want to go. So all the men were out there helping my aunt and mother to get him started, and he wouldn't go, and they put carrots in front of him and everything else. He wouldn't go. So somebody went ahead and poured what's the name of turpentine on his seat. And Lord have mercy, here he goes. We went down there and turned that corner where the Athens Theater is, and then my aunt and two wheels going around there. And finally she got him down there, and they come out to the old high school building, you know, where that's gone now, but I mean, we're on Rich Avenue. And they finally, one of them come out there and grabbed the old horse and pony and pulled him down. But it was quite a ride for that there man. I'm telling you, I don't know how she handled it, but without tipping over. But my mother, she didn't enjoy it not one bit. She sure didn't. But anyway, it was just a little thought about it.
Tell us, you mentioned the school that you started when you were about 7.
Yeah, that's the Glenwood School.
Glenwood?
Yeah, out there, Glenwood. You know where you go along, you'll see an old building there, and it's got, it's on the Van Cleef house is right here. And then you went on up, and it's an old building, but now, but it was made it had a school there, and that's where I went to school.
Do you remember your teachers? Or your,
yeah, one of them was Elizabeth Hayden, was the first teacher I had, and she was there where old, you know the house that, going down, you've heard about it, old Doc Sharp had it, going down well, it goes up there further up, and it burned down here a while back. Big old 2-story home.
What road are you talking about?
Glenwood, Grand Avenue.
Okay.
And going out, you know, because after, when you got as far as where it turns on, where the Glenwood Road comes into Grand Avenue, that was as far as they went with the paved road, see. And they only had one paved road they built going through Glenwood. They had 2 stores. And they had, of course, a filling station and a couple other things. And Glenwood was quite a thing then with that Bond Lumber Company being there, because a lot of them worked from there. And so that's where I grew up, with it. But the next one was, what was her name? Fanny Price. Yeah, she had a boy, John. And she had me. And then the last one I had was Mabel Bowen, I think was the last one I had there.
What grade was that?
That was in the 8th. It only went to the 8th. And then you went to high school in DeLand.
Who were some of your friends that went to school with you in
Dorsey bunch. They all went there. And of course, let's see, there's Miller's. The one boy that I thought so much of was Frazier, and his father was a photographer, and he was one of them that went around to the different places, and they used to go ahead and take pictures and that, and so I met him, and we went for 2 years. We were close together, and then he moved away. And then there was the Ellsworths that lived in that house going down on Grand Avenue on the left-hand side there. When you get down further down, we used to be right across from old Sharp's house there. I'll tell you where it is. You go down and where the 2 houses, the 2 roads come together now and make the one road going out on Grand Avenue, which is a paved road now. It used to be shell. Going down to the, and then of course the fish camp comes down there, you know. That was another place. They used to be called Highland Park. And Highland Park, just before we came down, was quite a nice village there. They had a hotel and everything. They were close to the railroad. And of course that's where you went down. Now you go down to that fish camp, Rollins, I think it is now. And before that, there was nothing down there. Down to going down to the Dead River. You crossed the railroad tracks, and after you crossed the railroad tracks, there was nothing down there but swamp. And I used to, when I was a young boy, I was a loner quite a bit. And I used to go out with the dogs. I had 2 dogs, and I'd go out with that. And I'll tell you an experience with these animals of Florida. We went and crossed over the railroad tracks, because I lived, see, that'd be about a mile from where I lived on Hazen Road down there, which wasn't called Hazen Road then. And come out to and hit Glenwood Road, which was the paved road. And anyway, I went down there, and the dogs went down. There was a big old mother bear with 2 cubs just down below the railroad tracks. And they were hunting for grubs, you know, and all that stuff. And these dogs went down there after them. And of course they went after the cubs. And man, one of them let a yelp out, and of course the old mother bear, boy, she took right out after them. And they, of course, the crazy damn fools run right for me. And here she come, legging it just as hard as she come. Man, I'm telling you, them bears can run. And I said, well, there's only one thing for old George to do, get up a tree. I guess I was about 8 or 9. Then at that time, I was 8. And so I was just going up the tree when one of the cubs let out a yelp. She turned around and went back to him. And that saved my hide that time. But so when I got home, my father said, I told him about what happened. He said, didn't I tell you, George, one thing? I said, yes. I said, you told me to go and put him on a leash. He said, I meant it too. So after that, there was no use telling him any more about it, because he was in his, he was up nearly 70. And so anyway, another time, I went out, and old Sherman Daniels, he was named Sherman. He was a black guy. He was the butter for, what's the name, J.C. Haynes had a big groves up there by Bethel Church, where the cemetery is. They used to have a church there. And I used to go out.
What did you say his job was?
A butter for the, grafting and budding, for trees, orange trees, see. And that was his job with them, see. And so I got to know him. And of course that was after Lou Gimgong. I'm way ahead of myself. And anyway, he used to go hunting. They loved possums, and they'd have them caged up when they caught them. Because all you had to do is pick him up by the tail and put him in the bag. And he'd play dead anyway. I mean, that's the way they do. And then they'd take him up there at home, and they had a cage. They put him in it, and they'd fatten him up on corn and clean them out. See, they called it cleaning out because, a possum eats dead stuff. And so they'd have them, And anyway, I went out with him, used to go out hunting with him at night, and he had a couple of old cur hounds. And we were down there at Glenwood, down there, back there where the old swamp was. I mean, back now wildlife's got all that. And we were down there. Anyway, they treed us, and we went down there, and he said, I guess they got a big coon up there. So I went out there, and he said, George, go up there and chase him down. So, when you're around 10, you don't think about anything about you do whatever they tell you to do. So I climbed up there, and that was the biggest bobcat I ever seen in my life, sitting up there. He was on this limb over here, see. When I climbed up, I got on this limb. Well, for some untold reason, don't ask me why, but he decided he didn't want me up there. So he come right straight down. There was nothing else I could do, but I threw my hand up, and he come down right through here.
Wow.
And so I had laid him low with a damn flashlight. I hit him over the head, and he bounced off and went down, and he come right down on top of them dogs. You never heard such a yelling and screaming in all your life. So anyway, I come home, and got down and come home. Boy, my hand was swelled up like I don't know what, because them old sizer teeth went right straight through. Anyway, my mother took me into the doctor, and he said, what happened? And of course they had finally got this rabies treatment, that they give you. And she explained it to him, and so I told him what happened. And he said, well, what happened to the cat? I said, boy, he took out for the swamp just as hard as he could go. I said, there was nothing wrong with him. So I never did get the shots for it, but they used the Epsom salts to go ahead and bring it down. And he cauterized it too, but he used those swabs. He just went down through it with turpentine. So,
Wow.
but I can remember that, and you know, my hand was bad off for about 6 weeks there for that sucker. And anyway, I told old Sherman, I said, Lord have mercy, don't ask me to go up no more trees with that. But that was the experiences with them, see. And of course, we used to, when we went hunting, back in all through in there, especially later on, I went out with old Johnny Odom. He lived on there where the place is now on Spring Garden Avenue. And his father owned quite a bit, and at that time when the boom was on, they made a fortune there because they called it, they had a filling station and one thing and another there at that time, and as I say, that was the start of Rolling Acres. I mean, later on, of course, Rolling Acres came in when this, after the war. But anyway, we used to go out hunting quite a bit, and these cats, these what they call Florida Panthers, we used to see them quite often. I mean, of course, they were very shy. You had to come on them, you know, because they roamed a section. In other words, the old male had one section that he'd go all around there. But I can always remember at night when we were, you know, camped out, he'd come around where you were, I guess, inquisitive, but he'd yell, and it was just like, they say, a scream of a woman. Boy, and it was, I mean, it really penetrated you. Yeah. And I can remember after the boom, everybody left here, you know. They left their houses all out there on, which is, going out on 17. You go on the number 11 going up there, Burnell, and they had several, what's the names, where they had the developments, you know, and they call them subdivisions and that. They had two in Glenwood, and the people just left their houses just as was. I mean, they didn't bother.
What years are you talking about now?
That'd be in about 1928 and that, but they left them, you know, just as they were. I mean, didn't bother with them. They just pulled out, and they left the animals, the dogs, that way, and the damn things went wild. And I remember we were out there, Johnny and I was out there hunting out there by, they call it Lake Savannah, which is south of, which is now the wildlife in Glenwood, back at the station back there. And we were out there one night, and a pack of them come. And I guess they'd been after a deer, and they come circling around us, and you could just see them out in the, you know, out in the perimeter of that. And old Johnny, he was always one to shooting at everything that come along. And he said, I'll fix them. And so he shot a couple of them. You know, they just jumped on them dogs. They were so hungry. They just jumped on them dogs and started eating them right there in front of us.
Wow.
And that I'll tell you that now. You want to know about Lou Gimgong, how I got acquainted with him. My father went up there, and he got acquainted with him through the Hazens. And
now, about what years are you talking
well,
about?
that'd be in 1920.
1920.
When we'd been down here about a year, and he got to know him. And old Lou Gimgong, as I say, was quiet and shy, but he did have as you say, what's the name on him? You know, where he'd laugh about things. And
had a sense of humor.
Yeah. And so.
Did he speak well?
Yeah.
Do you have any trouble? Yeah.
No, he was very good, and he not only that, he'd been educated pretty good too. And anyway, he had to, when you got through with him, when you were through talking with him and or whatever you were doing, he had what he called a grape arbor there, and it was like made into a little what do you call it, church, you know, where he had services and stuff there. And so before you left, you always used to have a little sermon and talk with that, because he was very religious. And of course, people there. So when he got acquainted with me and took to me, he said, well, would you like to know about pollinating? And he said, you're old enough to know about that. And he didn't talk too much, but I took to him. And he used to pollinate, and the way he did it was with tweezers. and he put the pollen, where the bees come along there, well, he put it from one tree to the other. So he taught me about that, and then he, of course, he was a good budder, and he grafted. Well, in California, they have what they call in budding. They slip the bud down from with the cut, which is a T. They slip it down with the new bud in there, and then wrap it. But that didn't work in Florida for one reason, Bo. You see, we used to have the rains, so the rain would come in. See, California didn't have as much rain as we did, so the Florida ones used to do it from the bottom up, and that way you got the rain dropped over after it was wrapped, so you didn't get it to run into the bud. Because another thing he taught me was, don't ever use your hands if they're sweaty in the summertime with salt, because that'll kill your bud right off the bat. The salt gets in there and kills the bud. So I learned it from him about the budding and originally he got, well, I went with him. I used to go up there on my own when I was around 8 or 9. I'd go up there and spend the day sometime with him. And of course, a lot of people said they knew him, and I guess they did know him, but they didn't know him as much as I did with being, close to him.
Well, he had a special name for you, didn't he?
Yeah, the Tiger.
Little Tiger?
Yeah, because see, my birth date was 1914, and that was the year of the tiger with them in China, because they have a year for each animal and all that stuff. So he called me Little Tiger, and so he took to me, and so I can remember I guess I was around 7, and anyway, he took to me, and I come up, my thumb had an infection in it, and boy, it was swelled up like the dickens. So my father, instead of going in there to the doctor, we used to have old Doc Stevens. He was up there, and so old Lou Gimgong said, "What's the matter with the boy's thumb?" He said, "Well, I don't know," but he looked at it, and he said, "I got the stuff to deal with it," and he brought it over from China. And boy, it was a tar affair stuff. I mean, it looked like tar. And anyway, he plastered it around and wrapped it up and everything. About 2 days later, my mother looked at it and she said, "Dad, you got to take him to the doctor. He's got blood poisoning." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I had the red lines coming up from the thing. She said, "You better go in there and see him, old Doc Stevens." And so went in there, and of course, all the doctors at that time was in the what's the name block of the Drika block, which now is that bank, SunTrust, I think it is, or one of them that's taken over the whole thing. They used to be on the second floor. All the doctors were on there, and old Doc Davis and Doc Stevens and all of them. So I went in there, and I remember I guess it was in the afternoon when I got in there, because my father went in with a buggy and a horse and went up there. And old Doc Stevens says to me, he says, "What in the world have you got on that boy's thumb?" He said, my father didn't want to go ahead and mention about poor old Lou Gimgong, so he said, well, a neighbor of theirs went in and told him to put this stuff on. And so he tried to get it off, and he couldn't get it off, and he said, told nurse, he said, "Go in there to the kerosene lamp," he said, "and get some of that kerosene, see if that won't take it off." And it finally did get it off, and he had the lancet. But he said, "Man alive," he said, "I've never seen such stuff in all my life as that." So, as I say, my father didn't want to bring him in on it, poor old Lou Gimgong, and that, and say, well, he did doctoring and all that stuff. So, that's how it was with Lou Gimgong with them. So. Yeah. He never did tell old Lou that what problems I had with it.
What did Lou Gimgong look like to you?
He was a very he was I think he came from, not real sure, he came from Canton in China, which was Cantonese, and they were slim. He was a very slim type man, and he had the features of the Chinese. But he was a very good, he was a fairly good-looking man, very nice, very well. You would take him as a well-educated person, like a professor or something like that, because that was his way of being.
How tall was he?
Oh, I'd say he was around, my father was 5'9". I'd say he was about 5'8" or 5'9", somewhere around there.
So he was a pretty tall man.
Yeah, he's not bad. I mean, he wasn't the short Chinese. He was more the taller Chinese.
How did he wear his hair?
Oh, he used to have it. He had it long, and he used to have it come down like this, you know. But he didn't have the pigtail like a lot of them did. I mean, a lot of the Chinese used to go in for pigtails, but he didn't have a pigtail. He had it cut off.
Any facial hair?
No.
Okay.
He was clean shaved, as far as I remember now. And he had, of course, as you say, knew, he had this pet rooster, and he had this horse that he had so much of. But I'll tell you, Bo, they used to do a lot when he got, when they found out that he had all these different varieties of trees and stuff, they would go in there and steal the stuff, and from the old man, you know, and of course, he didn't want to get in. I guess he was scared. So my father said to him one day, he said to him, well, Lou, he said, why don't you go ahead and put all that you have down, instead of in English, you put it in Chinese, and see what happens with that. And you know, they didn't bother then because they couldn't understand what the hell he had. See, I mean,
who was stealing it? Did you know?
People just, you know, where they go ahead, and especially some of these nurseries and stuff that he was developing new stuff, because he had a grapefruit there. I can remember that it would stay on the tree for a year and never, you know, deteriorate at all. I mean, and of course he got the Lou Jim Gong orange, which he was famous for. But he had other oranges too that he had developed, which never materialized. And of course he went in for shrubs too. He didn't have any of the azaleas or anything like that, but he did have hibiscus. So the original ones of your orange trees, the original one there early was called Bones Early, and it was a small little orange about that big around, but it had all ribs around it like that, just looked like ribs around the thing, see. And then they had Heart Slate, which was the forerunner of the Valenci. And both those orange trees were, originally they were offshoots of the Spanish trees that we had, because you could go down in the swamps, especially over there at Edgewater and all through in there, and you'd find these old Spanish trees, I mean, still with fruit and all that stuff up. One of them was a Sweet Seville, which was, they used to make into, because it had a tart flavor, they used to make it into marmalade. And I remember going in there when I used to drop over there hunting. We'd run across these trees in there, and sometimes here in close to DeLeon Springs, there was a lot of them there. I mean, you go in there that in the swamps and that stuff where they still didn't get froze out, you know. And people would drop the seeds, you know, and they just propagated, see, I mean, from them seeds. Then with the Heart Slate, I mean with the one there, the Bones Early, they developed, old man Hamlin developed the one they call the Hamlin. And then before that it was the what's the name, Norris Early. Man by the name of Norris developed it from the Bones Early and made it Norris Early.
Well, these aren't local people, are they?
No, they were ones from out, I forget now where it was. Yeah. Glen St. Mary used to be the big nursery at that time, and of course they had a lot of different trees, I mean, that they propagated, and but that's where it come. And then of course it went to Hamlin's, which we have today. But the Hamlin is not a shipper as good as the Parson Brown. The Parson Brown was the shipper. I mean, that's why everybody went with Parson Browns, because they had a heavier skin. The Hamlins have a thin skin. And and of course the Heart Slate was developed into the Valenci. And that's where that one got in. They propagated it. and got that going. I didn't have nothing to do with that business, but I did have the budding later on when I got older. I mean, that I was budding for people. I remember with Lou, I went ahead and funny thing happened. I said to my father, I said, you know, I said, wouldn't it be nice to have a lot of varieties on the same tree? And he said, yeah. He said, he sure would. Well, he had one they call what's the name, blood orange, which is the forerunner of an old, it was an old blood orange, but it was an old type one like the sweet seedlings. And then days when we had sweet seedlings, they called them, which was mid-season fruit. And they grew up tall, great big tall trees, but they withstood the cold a lot better than all the newer types, see, because when the newer ones, varieties were on, they budded them on sour orange stalk, or they budded them on rough lemon. Well, the rough lemon was all right. It would grow like a weed, but it froze like the first freeze come along, it would get him. And of course, it killed the whole tree. But they went ahead and, as I say, that's where we got the budding from. And of course, they got the pineapple and Enterprise seedless and all them. So I went ahead and budded, took one of the, you used to wait for about a year for the sour stalk to get up, and they used to call them pencil size. They just got a little bit bigger than a pencil. They were just perfect to bud, see. So you budded them in the spring when the sap was already up. And so I budded this tree with about 4. I remember I slipped the buds in there, and then dang gum thing turned out all right. And it was a blood orange and a grapefruit, marsh seedless, and I think I had a Hamlin on it. Oh, I know what it was, tangerine. And they thought that was the most wonderful thing in the world. But what happened was, Bo and Charles, the bees pollinated the damn things in there, see? And they got like mavericks. I mean, the dang things were all on the same tree. See, they just went from one to the other because they were pollinating. So you get the blood orange with the Hamlin, and oh man, it was a mixture. So it didn't work out all that well, but the tourists used to think that was wonderful at the Grove, you know, to see all these different varieties on there. So I did get away with it, but as I say, it was really funny, you know, because they pollinated. See, the bees they didn't know about one from the other, so when they got on the orange tree, they just pollinated it, you know. And
you were in citrus for a number of years?
My father was in it. I was in it with him till I'd come out of high school. He died the year I got out of high school. He was 80, just short 4 months of being 80 when he died.
Well, he was 60 when you were born.
Oh yeah, he lived. I was just about 20 when because I got a late start in high school, and anyway, because as I told you, he didn't want me to go there. But it was really funny. We used to have the tourists used to come around, you know, buy the oranges and stuff, and they went ahead and they were taken up with these different things, you know. I hope I'm not going over my time.
No, that's okay.
And anyway, he, as I say, they had a bad freeze that year. And he had the bad habit that my father did. He didn't see any sense in, they told him they'd build on, have his orange groves on the highlands, because the cold pockets of ones were the other way. But he thought he had to have everything go one way. I mean, just come all the way on through. So we had a bad freeze there the year I graduated out of high school, and he died. He died in the spring, and we had this freeze come in December. And I remember the old mill down there at DeLeon Springs froze up. It was so cold. It had icicles coming down the thing on that. It went down to, I think it was 12 or something like that, and it froze us out. So I didn't go back to Orange Grove business. Phil Knox's brother, John, he had gone through high school, and he said to me one day, he said when he come back, he'd gone to Parks Air College, and this was in 32. No, 33, I'm sorry. And he'd come back and he said, Georgie, how did you like to go up and plane? I said, sure, I would. And so that fascinated me, and that's when I took up flying. And he was good. He finally, of course, he was killed down in Brazil, I think it was, or Argentina. He worked for North American, which was the ones that built the AT-6s and for the Army and the Navy planes and that. But anyway, that's when I got into that. And of course with Lou Gimgong, I went ahead and stayed with him till I was around, I guess he died in 1925. And I remember we all went to the funeral of his.
Were you working with him?
I just went up there and played, around with the I was just a young kid then.
Oh, okay.
But
I wanted to ask you one more question about
Yeah.
Lou Gimgong. Was he reclusive, or was
Yes.
he wasn't? You didn't see him out in town too much.
No.
Yeah.
And he stayed pretty well around the home.
Yeah.
And he contrary to a lot of them, he didn't go, he wasn't over gushing with people or anything at all. He was quite reserved.
But he was friendly, right?
Oh yes, he was very friendly.
Well, I understand that he wanted to marry a local woman. Did you know anything about that?
Yeah, I heard her about that, but I don't think it. I think there was a little bit too much. She did befriend him.
Who was
she used
this?
to come. I forget now what her name was. She worked in the land. I think she worked in the courthouse. I forget now what her name was. but
Was it a Hagstrom, or do you know?
it has a meaning there, but not that I can recollect. But I remember him. He didn't. I don't think he was going to marry her. I may be wrong, but I don't think he. I think that was just one of the. He left it to her, though. He left the property to her. The woman in town. I don't know who she was. I can't remember now. But I remember that he left the property, all of his property there. He had that, and of course he didn't have too much of the. He had quite a bit of nursery there, but he had a little orange grove at the back. And of course he had his pet chickens and stuff like that. But
How did you know about his friendship with the lady in the courthouse?
from him,
He told you that he talked about it?
Yeah, he said that she had befriended him. She used to come out to him, and he said, I remember him saying to my dad, I remember him saying, well, he didn't think about getting married. He was, of course, he was up in years then, see.
Yeah.
But I don't know where that come from, but I may be wrong. But I never heard about it. I mean,
Did he say how they met?
yeah, she came out there on a Sunday with some friends of hers, and and of course the old man used to take them around, and show them the place, and as I say, he had that little altar in the thing where he used to make his have his service, for church service, because as I say, he was very religious. But I remember him saying that I do remember when he was that he said that he wouldn't get married. He was too old.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where that all come from, but I do know he left it to her. But I know, Bo, I can't remember her name.
Were there people who gave him a tough time because of a different culture? The people that didn't accept him?
In a way, there was one man that used to do a lot for him, Charlie Dillard. He lived there. When you go out on Hazen Road, they got two big sinkholes there with ponds in them. When you're coming from DeLand, from Minnesota, coming down here, it's on the right-hand side. Well, right across from there, Wilbur Harp's got the property now, and his wife has. But there used to be a big old two-story house, and Charlie Dillard lived in it. And he used to go over to the old man. He got to know the old man, and he felt sorry for him, because the old man got so wrapped up in his work that he was doing, and a lot of times he didn't cook his meals. So old Charlie would take him over his Sunday dinner, and they made it up. And of course, he didn't live very far. He only lived about a quarter of a mile around the corner there. And so he was very good to him, and he used to carry him over meals and stuff like that. But I remember Charlie, the old man, telling my father and that, he said, I didn't expect anything from him, from that there, but he said, I didn't think he'd go ahead and give it all to a damn woman. Of course, he was a cracker, one of them old crackers, and he spoke what he thought,
Yeah.
But he said, I didn't expect, of course he did, he left it all to her. And poor old Charlie said, he said, at least, he said, I would have liked, something that he had that I could remember him by, but he didn't. So that was the story on that. But I remember hearing it.
Okay. You mentioned the Athens Theater.
Oh, yes.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah, I remember coming in. My mother, that was 1921. And we walked in when they had the business of the Athens Theater, when they opened it up, and several people, the one was Polly Hazen, had shares in it when it was built. I mean, you could buy shares in the thing, and it was quite modern. I mean, it was the real thing. I mean, the land, being the end of Indiana Avenue, because see the fire station and all that, what's the name, the City Hall was right there by the old post office, which was on Indiana. Now it's, of course, turned into that county, what's the name?
County building.
Building, yeah. But before that, they used to be right across from there. And then right on the left-hand side, where the parking lot is, used to be old Doc Davis's, where he had his place of, what they call office and all that there. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, they built the courthouse there. I remember when the courthouse was built.
Do you remember that being built?
Oh, yeah, and it was quite a mean thing. It cost, at that time, Bo, $500,000. That's what it cost. They thought it was a terrible thing, pay that much money. And now, when I listened to that one up there, where the Justice Center, $45 million, I said, Lord have mercy alive. So and it's really a beautiful place, a beautiful one, and that's when they put that one in the center, the pond, in the center of this courthouse, the old courthouse,
the fountain in the
fountain in the middle. It was quite a thing because they had the fountain going.
And the rotunda there.
Yeah, the rotunda, and then of course it went all to the different places, and then they had down below was of course their basement with all the stuff in it. But after the war, why it just served its purpose. It got crowded out. Because they developed so much.
Yeah.
But another thing I was going to tell you about was years ago, everything revolved up at Stetson. You know where the Cummins Gymnasium is? The Cummins Gymnasium there, the old Cummins Gymnasium.
Yeah.
Well, at the back they've got the quarters, the tennis courts and all that stuff. Well, that used to be the whole thing in those days. That's where they had the football team, the games, and all that was behind there. Mm. And Stetson had the field back there, and we used to go up from the high school, and they had several games played there. Before they moved over to where Emily Hall is, then they built a field over there for football games. That's where Emily Hall is now. And of course, old man Hulley, his father, he was killed. He was shot up there at Lincoln Hulley's dad was the caretaker, and he had a house there where Shadoan Hall is, just there where those oak trees are. He had what's the name? They had their house, which was a caretaker's house, and the girl said there was somebody looking in the windows, so he went out, and he went over there to it, and it was a black guy, and damn if he didn't shoot old man Hulley and kill him, and that was terrible. That was really a disaster. Because people went up in the airs and all about it, and that stuff. And of course, Lincoln was, I think he was just a young boy then, I mean, a young fellow, but he went through Stetson. Of course, being that they worked, they could go and get their tuition paid off. But I remember that well about it.
Do they know why he shot him?
No, I guess he thought he was coming on him, was going to take him or something, but I don't know, he just killed him anyway. That's where he was. And anyway, they used to have, Bo and Charles, they used to have the, when the 4th of July was, all these, what's the names, these butcher shops and that would donate the animals for the barbecue. And that's where they had it, was behind the Cummins Gymnasium. And then they had a baseball game, this was the 4th of July. And that's when they used to have, and everybody would come, and the bake company, the one that was in there would donate the buns, and of course they all had beans. The beans were the whole thing in those days. So you had a real meal there with barbecued meat, and they'd stay up all night. Klingerman's had the butcher shop, Marsh had the other one. Klingerman's had it on the boulevard, and they'd donate a cow, see, and or a young heifer or steer, and then they used to cut the old heifer in the middle, right down. Then they'd barbecue it over the hot coals there, and they'd stay up all night barbecuing that damn thing for the people next door. And they say that they had a big time, and then that ball game afterwards, and everybody you go. They took the day off, and that was it. See, everything closed down. But I remember another thing happened there with one there on where Emily Hall is, when they had the football games there. When the high school went over there and had the football games before they built that stadium, which old Roosevelt built with the WPA. The stadium there was in his start of his, when he put all these people to work with the WPA. That's when they built that stadium down there for the where they had the ball games. But before that, they used to go to the one across there at Emily Hall there. Well, I call it because you know where it is. Had a big football game there. And I remember we went there to one Stetson game, because Stetson had a football team then. But later on, it was so expensive, they just got away from it, I think, and didn't bother with it no more. So the high school used to use that too. That same place. I never went in for sports too much, because when you had to take a physical, and old Doc Brown, he lived up there right across from the high school, and I went to him, and he said I had a murmur in my heart and I couldn't do it. So he said, no, you've got to stay away from it. As a matter of fact, he didn't want to even, and my father wanted to take an insurance out for me so I could go through college, and he didn't even want to do that, because he said, well, so I don't know. I survived all that length of time anyway, but he said no. So I used to go and go to the football games there. But what I was going to say was, they had a game there between Stetson and Millsaps. I can remember it very well. And this Millsaps boy charged through to tackle a fella and broke his neck. Snapped his neck right there on the field. And
the Millsaps boy broke his own neck?
Yeah, he tackled the guy, and he hit him, I guess, just right where he caught him in his neck, He was hitting for his legs, And anyway, make a long story short, he died on the field.
The Stetson boy died?
No, the Millsaps boy
yeah.
died,
Okay.
And, but that was just one of the things that happened out there, that I remembered it by. Yeah. But I remember the hanging in DeLand, when they had the hanging down there on New York Avenue.
What year was that?
That was in 26 or 27. I think it was 26. Yeah. This fellow went and shot a taxi cab driver. And he went ahead and I remember them, what's the name, Nordman. He was a construction man. And he built the scaffold, and he built it there, and they had it right out in the open. Everybody stood around all around the place, all on New York Avenue there, to see the pull the lever.
In front of the courthouse?
You know where the jail is now?
Yeah.
Well, that's where it was. They had the old jail there, see? And they took him out there and brought him out. And everybody, the whole town closed up right there to go and see this. They let them all come there. And I remember some of the high school kids, they went down, and so did I. My uncle went ahead and said about what was going to happen. And but everybody crowded around there to see it happen. It was quite a thing. And they came out with several things about lynching, but I never heard of any of the lynching when I was there. I knew they took, the Ku Klux Klan took, remember out there at Glenwood, we had an old drunk who would beat his wife up every Saturday night, and they left a note on his, I guess it was the Ku Klux Klan. Anyway, they left a note on there telling him to shape up or suffer the consequences, and he didn't pay no attention to him. They took him out there, and they horsewhipped him within an inch of his life. I mean, they just, they used the old black snake whip. And that man never drank another drop after that when he got home. I swear to goodness, it did the best thing they ever did, because he never drank another drop. And
let me ask you about the hanging. One question. Do you remember the crowd response once it actually happened?
yeah,
What did the crowd do?
I wouldn't say they applauded or anything. They were really taken back, you know, to see somebody drop down like they did. Of course, they had a curtain around the bottom, you know, where you couldn't see him after he dropped through the hole. But I didn't see him make a big fuss, you know. Like people say, well, they cheered or...
They didn't cheer.
No, it was pretty quiet.
So do you think the people were horrified by what they saw?
No, they just took it, you know, as because we didn't have very much crime, Bo, in those days.
Well, hangings weren't very common.
Oh, no. The nearest lynching that I ever remember happening was out there on Daytona Road. There, the two boys, brothers, their younger brother, this taxi cab driver ran over him over Daytona and killed him. And so the deputy sheriff was bringing him over to DeLand, see, because that was the county jail. They didn't have all them jails over there that they got. And so they brought him over here. And on the way over, they went and stopped the deputy sheriff, these two brothers of the boy that got killed. And they took the guy out, held the deputy up and put a gun in his neck, I guess, and held him up there. And they took the guy out and shot him. And I remember that was the nearest I ever heard of any lynching. But the two brothers went ahead and shot the guy he never did get a trial or anything else. I mean, they took him out. But that was, of course, you see that every day now. But
now, was that a black man or was that a white man? Do you know?
I think it was a black man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you had some black friends.
Yeah.
Did that cause any trouble with you with the Ku Klux Klan?
No. I remember the first Ku Klux Klan. I laugh about it now. When I was a boy, my father had a couple of burglaries, and so they, of course, in those days they blamed the blacks for they'd blame them for it. Of course, you know, that was pretty common. I mean, that they'd get the blame for it, which was wrong, because a lot of the blacks were real good people. I mean, there was no wrong. As I say, the ones that lived right close to us, he had his own little farm, and he had his own grove, and he used to work for people and raised his family and everything else. Mm-hmm. But I remember one night, Charles, all these ones rode up. They had all their, hoods on, and the ones over the horses, you know, with the sheets over them, and all the old horse had was his ears out, and you could see his eyes, you know. And they come up there to my father and said to him, about what happened and all that, and he said, well, they just come in there and stole the stuff and went on. So I remember him talking to my father, you know, and then they went off, and one of them big old what's the names at the back of our place, the pits. There was two